Good morning, community. Good morning. Another day together, being better with God and better with man. So good to see so many of you coming in on this morning. Y'all, excuse my heavy wearing of my paraphernalia from my other position. We got a lot going on. And so I've been busy and getting up early and going straight from here to that. But y'all take note, it does not matter how busy I am with that. I am sticking with us because y'all sticking with me. And we're going to stick here together, growing in God and growing in our connection with one another. So I'm going to invite you to go ahead and run with me right on over to page 113, day number 26, destined to be a star. And we're going to deep dive even the more into our queen sister, Esther, as we take away some very important lessons for today. Good morning to everybody. I see so many of you coming into the room. I'm so excited about this lesson because I think that it is like that reality stuff. It's that real truth that I often desire and hunger for in the body of Christ. I understand, y'all, the power of miracles. I understand how God can come through out of nowhere. I understand how he can turn things around and all of those good things that are the shoutable moments in our services and the, oh my God, did it type of stuff. But I would feel I would feel remiss if I did not also say, though, that there is a certain measure of effort and time and thinking that should be given to the journey of walking it out as a daughter of the King. And there are enough of us on the lines, I am sure, who would probably raise their hands with me and say, yes, because everything does not work out like that. Everything is not a late in the midnight hour, God turned it around. Everything is not a just in the nick of time he came through. There are moments when there are processes and there are conditions and there are parts of our journey where we're like, man, God, where are you? Where are you in the midst of all of this? Where are the promises? Where are the manifestations? Can I get anybody else who would, Regina would say, facts? Yeah. Like, where's that part? And so I am always strengthened and encouraged when we get to look at elements of our faith that are not always delicious, but the part that makes us still make a very informed decision that I'm going to stand flat footed and not be moved. And so anybody else joining us right there saying, yeah, I've lived long enough to understand everything is not butterflies, honey. Everything is not, he turned it around. Everything is not that, but I've learned how to walk through the valley of the shadow. There are some of us who are in the walkthrough stage. We've learned how to walk through the valley of the shadow, and we keep putting one foot in front of the other with our eyes fixed on God because the faithful one is promised. And so when we join right here, and day 26, with destined to be a star, with insights from Queen Esther, that's the condition, y'all. I can imagine Esther, who is of the people of faith, who've heard about this God that her parents and her grandparents and God, look at here, my uncle that I'm living with, they love. But when I look around my life, man, I don't see what they're talking about, because at this point, Esther is an orphan. She doesn't have either of her parents, right? And I am sure she can look at her cohorts or other young people who are her age and see them with their mom or see them with their dad. And has anybody ever been there realistically where you're like, well, God, why me? It's not that you wanted whatever the calamity was that's happening in your life to happen in somebody else's life, but you are curious as to, like, why me though? Why my son? Why my mama? Why my child? Why my grandmother like that? Why my best friend? Like, why me? And so I can imagine that if we were to step into Esther's shoes, there could have been moments of feeling like there's this huge discrepancy between what I've heard about my God and what I am experiencing. And so I see people saying that that's a truth. Yes, right? And so Esther is an orphan, and Esther is in captivity, and she's in a foreign land, and there can be elements of loneliness and feeling lost and like, I don't know what my next steps are going to be. And in the midst of what already seems to be in the midst of, can somebody meet me there and say, in the midst of, when issues start having issues, when concerns start having concerns, when obstacles multiply. So in the midst of all of that is already seemingly out of order, Esther finds herself in the midst of calamity within the kingdom. Man, y'all get this. I want somebody to get this on this morning, that the calamity and the chaos and the conditions and the circumstances that you have already survived in your private world is what is equipping you to stand in the public world. Hear me. You're in the midst of that you have survived in your private world is what is strengthening you to take a stand in the public world. Those mishaps, those get back ups, those sucker punches, those gut wrenching moments, that disappointment in your private world is what is strengthening you to be able to stand in the public world. And so I want you to see that Esther had already gone through a measure of calamity, a measure of depression, of sadness, of destruction, a measure of disorder and disarray and chaos in her private world. So when the kingdom began to fall apart, there wasn't a moment for her to panic, to fall apart. Esther had already done the journey of that in her private world. Some of you have been strengthened to be the solution, and you didn't even understand why you were learning to pack the weight of something on your personal shoulders. You didn't understand why tears were coming from your eyes and you were still surviving in your personal world. You didn't know why you had to overcome the betrayal and go through the infidelity and the disloyalty. You didn't understand why you had to feel ostracized and separated from family in your personal world. You didn't know why the father said the stuff that hurt you or abandoned you. You didn't know why you had to be able to walk through and learn how to stand alone and make a decision on your own. You didn't know why you had to struggle to go to school or work 2 or 3 jobs to mind your way, and you didn't have that support. You didn't understand how the personal victories were going to strengthen you and empower you to one day lead and rule in the authority that God already has destined on your life. You didn't know that you were already paying the process. You didn't know that you were already paying the price and going through the process of your stand up and public victories that were coming your way, but somebody has already been paying the price privately. Can somebody say, I've been through some stuff I ain't never even told y'all about, some tears I've never even shed in a public place. I've had some whispers at night to God about why me. Father, there are times when I felt alone, and why am I the only one? And why do I think like I think and move like I move? Somebody already knows you paid the price privately for what God is about to do in your life publicly. Can somebody receive that on this morning? You have already practiced. You have already paid the price. You have already been processed for the public victories that are coming your way. Somebody go ahead and receive that in the name of Jesus. And so what does that look like? What does that look like? Well, when we look at our Queen Sister Esther, she already knows what it looks like to be in a foreign land, to be lonely, to be bewildered, to not have that covering, to not have her parents there. So having to lean into the wisdom and into the fortification of family, and having to make her way, understanding that there is a price and a calling on her life that's bigger than what she can actually see. She's already living that journey. And so when the kingdom begins to uproot and to have these moments of chaos, these moments of disconnection, these moments of broken relationship, that doesn't feel like anything new or overwhelming for Esther. She's now in a kingdom where the queen is being absent and there's a brokenness in a relationship, Queen Esther is probably processing the chaos that is running through the land and thinking, they all in an uproar because the king and the queen are having issues, and people are in some sense of bewilderment and wondering, what in the world am I going to do? What in the world are we going to do? But if it's broken relationships and feeling disconnected, I've already been there and I've already done that because I've survived not having both of my parents. I've survived nights not having my mother's shoulder to lay on or my father's lap to crawl up in. And so while they're all running around trying to get in some sense of calamity about a queen exiting the throne and they don't know what they're going to do, I've been there and I've survived that. And if I can survive feeling disconnected and at a loss from the two people who created me, who mean the most to me, then this right here, somebody better track me on this morning. This right here, this right here ain't nothing to me. If you've been in a dynamic where you've had like a father not speaking to you or a mother not speaking to you or some estrangement in a family dynamic because you stood for truth or you drew healthy boundaries or you said enough is enough, then you and I both know that when you go into a workplace or you go into a school setting or you go over there into a ministry setting, God forbid, and somebody ain't speaking to you because you dare to take a stand and draw a line and say no means no, baby, you look at that stuff and you say that's a cakewalk. I've already survived worse than that in my private life. I've survived a father not speaking to me or a mom not speaking to me or somebody in my family not speaking to me because I drew a line and I had boundaries. So you not talking to me, oh, I got that. That's a cakewalk. And I'm just saying all of that to say Esther had already been tried in the fire. Esther had already gone through some things in her personal world. So when it came time to take a stand in the public world and to move with calmness and to move with ease and to have a sense of being grounded and rooted and being sure of her direction, Esther was in a space where this right here, this is a cakewalk. And so the kingdom is in a condition of calamity. The kingdom is in a condition of chaos because they are losing the queen. But Esther's private struggle has already primed her to be ready for that. And so my encouragement to any of us on this morning is to really reflect on the private victories that you've already won, to really reflect on the private victories that you've already gained, the things you know you can check your name off when it comes to that. And some of those private victories will be the indicators of where God is taking you next. Some of you have separated from institutions and organizations that literally bear your last name, that are a part of your family units, but you understand the necessity to grow. You understood the necessity to be able to move in ministry, to be able to navigate and move how God has called you to move. And so when opportunity comes and it feels as if somebody's acting a particular type of way because you got to say no, or you got to walk free, or you got to make a transition in how you operate, you got to remind yourself, honey, child, I done did that already. That right there, you cold shouldering me because I understand that it's my moment to move forth. You doing all of that, that don't do jack to me. I done survived all of that already over here. Can somebody meet me in the comments and say already? Already. Some of us have to gain our strength to go through our next by reminding ourselves of what we have already survived, what we have already overcome, what we have already accomplished, hurdles we've already jumped over. Is it making sense to anybody? Are there any persons on today, this morning, who are meeting me in the comments and you're saying already, God, give me my next. God, give me my next. Give me my increase, my opportunity, my open door, my promotion, my time to shine. Give me my next because I have been processed already. I see you meeting me there saying already. You have already been processed for your next. And so when the world, the Persian kingdom, is looking and in upheaval, and there's anger and there's unrest in the kingdom, those are the conditions that God has already allowed to be made orchestrated, because he already knows that Esther is destined to be the next queen. And so you all, as you are receiving this already over your lives, I remind you, as you are receiving this already over your lives, I remind you again, as you are receiving this already over your lives, I remind you that your opportunity for success, your opportunity for your next, your opportunity to transition to the next place of healing and breakthrough for your life. It does not have to be packaged in a ribbon with a pretty bow. It does not. We see that Esther's opportunity is packaged in the midst of anger and separation and conditions that are less than ideal. Let's be mature believers. Let's be kingdom citizens. Let's understand that we really are created for such a time as this. And nothing about our moment has to have balloons and confetti for us to walk through. If our promotion comes packaged in ugly, if our promotion comes packaged in hard, if our promotion comes packaged in difficulty, if our promotion comes packaged in our enemies being at the table right around us, there are those of us who have made up our minds that however it comes, I'm going to walk through that open door. Is there anybody receiving that with me on this morning? However, the promotion comes, however, the increase comes, however, the opportunity comes, however, my chance comes, however, the manifestation comes, I am going to walk through that with God. I'm going to go with God in the face of it and do what I have to do to be all that God has created me to be. We're not waiting on red carpets and balloons and confetti for us to walk into what God has for our life. Anybody receive that on this morning? I see Alice saying, mature woman, arise. We are arising and we are recognizing that it does not have to look this way. And so here's the part that if you turn with me on page 114, the first paragraph says, and so when the decree went forth, maidens gathered. Y'all, this is a part of the process. Being willing to put your name in the selection process, being willing to show up, being willing to bet on yourself is what I say, being willing to give yourself a chance. So although the conditions were not ideal, when it came time for this moment to be created, for maidens to be the next queen, it says people began to gather. And Esther was a part of that gathering. This is not the season to wait on someone. Let me rephrase that. This is not the season to require that someone beg you to show up. In difficult moments when the world needs an answer, they do not have time to try to encourage, inspire, coerce, motivate, hype you up to show up for your opportunity. These are the moments when you walk through open doors, sometimes uninvited. When an invitation does come and you say yes quickly. When you create moments at the table, if there's no seat at the table for you. This is not the time to play in the shadows. This is not the time to revert to no weapon formed against me will prosper. This is the time to say that the weapons of your warfare, it is the offense. It is going after what God has for you. Everybody receive that on this morning. It is not the time for you to wait in real life, in real time application and say, you know, when the boss gets around to asking me what I've done, I'm going to make it a point. No, this is the time to live and to be successful, to accomplish out loud. It may be the time when you have to go knock on the supervisor's door and you may have to say, I just wanted to share this new plan that I have. I just wanted to share this creative solution that I've come up with. I just wanted to ask you, are you thinking about creating a different department that will manage this? And if you are, I would like to be the lead. This may be the time when you have to be out loud about what you're up to. This is what I desire. I know it's not evaluation time, but I've not had my evaluation in a year or so. And I just want to bring this to your attention and tell you that these are the increases that I think I am deserving of. And here is why. This is not the time again to revert back to waiting, to the posture of defense. But God has equipped us, y'all. We've already paid the price privately. Here is the time to show up, to gather at the opportunity and speak up and go through the process. So here's what's happening. The maidens are gathering and Esther puts her name in the game. Esther shows up with the gathering women. Esther shows up, orphan that she is, without parents, captivity in another land, a foreigner in a Persian kingdom. Esther shows up to put her name in the plate. Esther is not summoned by the king. She is not summoned by the court. The invitation or the opportunity is made public, and Esther shows up for it. Some of you get that because sometimes it takes too much effort for some of us to show up. Somebody has to come and encourage us. Somebody has to come and tell us that we can do it. Somebody has to call our name. Somebody has to give us another shot. Somebody got to pick us up and take us over there. It's time out. Mature woman, arise. Show up for the opportunity. Create the opportunity. Put your name in the plate. Call some folk. Knock on a door. Say, I want to talk to you about what I'm up to. Create the opportunity. Show up. And so Esther shows up. And here's the part. It says, and then there is a grooming process, y'all. This is the part of the journey that I was referencing earlier, coming back full circle, where everything is not always easy and everything is not always immediate. Some of you get a first no and you quit. You don't know that sometimes no's are a part of the process. And it's not until you get that fifth no that the sixth one becomes a yes. It's the process. And so Esther shows up for the process, and we will talk more about the process. But this is what I want you to know. There was a grooming process. And that process was intended to wean out some candidates and to put some candidates in. If you go back and read in Esther chapter 2, it was not a quick fix, y'all. Esther literally, after it was narrowed down, I want to say to about 6 maidens that were chosen, there was still a year's worth of a process. Some of y'all can't go through nothing. Some of y'all quit too quick. Some of y'all give up on the idea and you give up on your journey too quick. You don't know how to dig your heels in and do the hard parts. You give up too quick on the promise. And I apologize that you have lived for much of your faith walk in a society that teaches you the false messages that if you run around 3 times and touch the altar, by the time you get back to your seat, God's gonna do it. Will somebody meet me in the comments and say, no, he don't? Some of you have got the whole notion in your head. And again, I acknowledge in the culture that you've probably been raised in a faith walk, baby, they tell you to turn around 3 times and touch your neighbor. And by the time, no, it don't. They tell you to come and sow a seed on it and sow the seed with a particular number. If you believe in God to remove, I don't know, the 25 years that are over your child's life, sow the seed of $25. And by the time you get home, no, he don't. I owe you that to tell you that. And because many of us have been brought up into that stinking thinking, we've missed out on the old saints teaching where they used to tell us, tarry a while, wait on him. Trust him, hang on in there. And so now when you hear words like refine as fire and you're singing the words to a song like refine as fire, sweet perfume, you think it's cute. You think it's something beautiful about the refiner's fire and the sweet perfume, and you don't really understand that it is a process. It is the aching. There is nothing about a fire that's cute. If anybody done ever touched something hot, or you was getting your hair done on Easter with that hot comb, you already know that ain't even fire. That's just heat, and there's nothing cute about it. So when you really get a true imagery of a refiner's fire, that means that there are parts of you that you're saying, God, take it away from me, and he's doing the hard parts. It's the part of you that says, I surrender all, and you're watching yourself lose folk and lose friends and lose connections. It's the part of you that if you're saying the refiner's fire and I want to go through and be made like him, where you find yourself having to lay down old habits, and you're finding yourself having to close your mouth and not say what you used to say, when you're finding yourself not being invited to stuff you used to be invited to because you don't act like you used to be. That's the process, y'all. That's the process. And many of us have been indoctrinated into a culture, in our faith culture, where anytime something takes a moment and we got to wait on it, then we're out of it. And we think that that was a no, or that was a misstep, or it was out of the will of God. Sometimes you getting a no is the will of God, because it teaches you to keep going and to keep trusting him regardless of what we see. The refiner's fire, y'all, is not cute smoke. The refiner's fire is hot and it's hard, and there are obstacles and they're dying, and there's a scraping away of ourselves, and we're becoming more like him. Esther was in a process. And while people rush us into the story where she gets to be on the throne, the reality is when we read the Bible in context, meet me in the comments. Y'all know I push that in context. You will find in chapter 2 that after the process is narrowed down, there is still a whole year of grooming that is taking place. The process. So we have the conditions that were less than ideal, and we have the process that was long and arduous. But listen, Queen Esther, obviously, because her name became Queen Esther, transitioned from being an orphan to being the queen, because she came into and was able to survive the public uncomfortable conditions. She went through the process, but we run it back to really understand, because she had already been being made in her private places. It's time to go, y'all. I know I'm there. In her private places. Will somebody say, in my private space, in my private place? That's where I want to be made right with God. That's where I want to be strengthened. In my personal convictions, I want to be disciplined in my own mouth. There are conversations I have, y'all, and I can't even make it home good. And honey, I promise to God, it don't even be no untruth. It don't be no profanity. But I promise to God, he'll nudge me and say, but you didn't have to have that conversation. You didn't have to go down that road. That's not beneficial for where I'm taking you. That's not what I want you to do. Some of y'all are in that same process, that in your private worlds, you'll be feeling like, I can't hardly do nothing. God is convicting me. Stuff that used to be all right with me, it ain't all right no more. I can't laugh like I used to laugh. I can't go like I used to go. I can't move like I used to move. I can't do how I used to do. Y'all don't despise that. You are being processed in the private for what God is going to do in your public. I'll wrap up with just my own personal share. I said this last week, and y'all know I've been declaring and saying. So the radio show went live, and we're still working out the tweaks, but it's live. And Jen said to me today when she saw me in my shirt, she said, oh, you got your press conference today. I do. I'm not saying this stuff to brag. Just talked to several key leaders in the city on my personal phone just yesterday, getting ready for a press conference. Going to roll out today. I already know, be about 200-300 folk in the room. I share those types of things here to say, but y'all are firsthand witness. Like, I don't have to convince you. You're firsthand witness. Y'all were here when we were getting up, teaching, maybe about 10, 15, 20 folk. Right? Faithful, consistent. Technology wouldn't work. Stuff was crashing. Some of y'all remember when the thing crashed, I had to get on my phone and teach from my phone. It's the process. Y'all, it's the process. So now when God begins to open doors and they say, curate your own radio show, come and do a press conference in front of hundreds of people. It's why I keep showing up here, because this was the process. This is what taught me discipline. This is what made me get up and be consistent every day with sickness in my body, when I'm traveling out of town, when I'm in zones, when I'm in another country, sitting in airports. This is what made me say we're going to go from one day a week to every day of the week. And we're going to get up and we're going to show up and we're going to do what we have to do time and time again in the private process, in the private parts. So when you tell me to come in here and look at this camera and do this and do that, you ain't talking to me about nothing. I done had to make do with technology that ain't half this fancy. I done had to set it up myself and cut on my own lights and get on my own phone and keep moving. So now when I walk in a studio and you say, all I got to do is step here and look there, you ain't teaching me nothing. I done been through a private process. I want to encourage each of you for what you are doing. Listen, pull down the stinking thinking of instant. Some of the things that you have given up on, it was not that God said no. It was not that it was not a God idea. It was not that he had not ordained that thing to be so. You just gave up in the process. Do you know how many no's I got before I got a yes? Do you know how many days I got up and was sick and tired and feeling like, when am I going to get my moment before I got a minute of a moment? Do you know how much product and teaching opportunities and stuff I did for free before I began to get waiting lists and had to tell people I don't have any more room? Do you know how many people took advantage of my giving and my sowing and my going forth and wouldn't give a dime before I finally got to a place where customers began to pay me what I'm worth? Do not discredit what God has put on the inside of you just because you have to go through the process to get to the clientele, to get to the moment, to get to the audience, to get to the customers that have already been ordained for you. I know I'm talking hard because I never want you to feel like, because you see my public successes now, that there is something quite special about me. Y'all know I love to say there is something quite special about me, and then there ain't. Because I'm not going to minimize that I'm special to God. But what I'm really trying to project is, so are you. You are too. Just stick with your process. It wasn't that something was wrong with your candles. It wasn't that they were priced too high. You sometimes got to go through enough of folk trying to bargain with you and want you to do them cheaper and do them smaller and all this other kind of stuff. Sometimes you got to do that with your candles. Sometimes you got to do that with your catering company. Sometimes you got to do enough tests to let people see that what you produce is good. But God will put a hedge of protection around you and say, that's enough now. Let's shift. Let's go to a different group of folk. Like, it's all a part of the process. So that when you get your moment, sometimes you got to give a few books away for free. Do y'all know the number of times I've done that and said, buy one and get another one so that you can share? So that eventually the right person, it's in the hands of the right person who says, let me take that to a publicist. Do not despise your process. Somebody get that and say, I receive it. Do not give up on your gift, on your calling, on your blessing, on your opportunity, on your door because of your process. Don't allow the length of the process, the hurdles of the process, the naysayers of the process, the no's of the process, the requirements of the process to cause you to forfeit the promise. Somebody better take that word. Don't allow the process to cause you to forfeit the promise. Y'all receive it on this morning? Receive it with love. Y'all hang in there. Keep going. Clap hard for folk who look like they're in their winning season, because you don't know what they had to go through to finally win. Clap hard for folk. Sow that seed. Sow that seed. Clap hard for folk who look like they're in their winning season, because you do not know what they had to go through to finally get their win. But when you put that into the earth as seed, you watch. The day will come when the world will be clapping hard for you. Y'all receive it. I love y'all. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's time to go. I will see you right back here in the morning. We'll do some wellness work with processes. So what do these processes look like? We'll do some wellness work with that. As always, I really do. I honor the greatness that's on the inside of you. See you in the morning.